Hi, I'm Stu from Brit Hikes Ontario, and this is my journey by hiking trail and by road through Northern Ontario. So join me for the wildlife, nature, birding and beautiful scenery of Northern Ontario. The journey begins as we leave Toronto for North Bay, the gateway to the north. We reach Timmins and Cochrane before arriving in one of our most northerly major towns, Hearst. Heading west, we travel to Thunder Bay and our most western point, Fort Frances. Once again, we turn north for Dryden before completing a loop and returning to Thunder Bay. The journey back to the south takes us to Schrieber, Wawa and Batchawana Bay, and then Sault Ste Marie, Little Current on Manitoulin Island, and finally Sudbury and Parry Sound. We start with an evening drive north from Toronto until our arrival in North Bay. Ironically, after a 4-hour drive away from the big city, our accommodation featured framed watercolour paintings of, you guessed it, Toronto. The following morning, we begin our first foray into Northern Ontario. At Martin River Provincial Park, we begin by hiking the short logging trail. It's a signed educational trail with information about the history of the logging industry. Our first day into Northern Ontario was chilly. It's quite cold, though it would get colder later in the trip. The logging trail also contained traditional cabins and tools from the logging and blacksmithing industries. Next, we moved on to the Old Growth Trail. We had a few minutes of good birding partway through. Blackburnian Warbler. Among some more common birds, in addition to the Blackburnian Warbler, we also spotted a northern flicker, a yellow-bellied sapsucker, a Pine Warbler, and my favourite warbler, a black and white. I'm surprised Nikon haven't contacted us yet for sponsorship purposes. Most birders like to keep a life list, which is a list of the birds that they have spotted during their lifetime of birding. We spotted a bird that was a lifer for both of us, a blue-headed vireo. Later in the trip, we'll see more of them, so stay tuned for when I capture a photo of one. For now, let's move on to our next stop. This was a very brief stop to visit the area near to where Grey Owl once lived. As a youth in England, Archibald Bellany was fascinated with wildlife and tales of North American Indians. At 17, he came to Canada and soon began living among the Ojibwa on Bear Island. He adopted native dress and customs and worked as a woodsman, fire ranger and trapper in northeastern Ontario. In the 1920s, Bellany became concerned that the lumber industry and sportsmen were plundering the northern wilderness and threatening the survival of the native culture. He took the name Grey Owl, Washakwanassin, and turned his efforts to conservation, pleading for recognition of the natural brotherhood between man and animals. Grey Owl gained international fame as a writer and public speaker. We awake on a misty, rainy day in Timmins and travel to Hearst Lake Conservation Area, but all we really see on a slow morning is a wood duck out on the lake.
Can you see a duck?
On the opposite shore, someone has been keeping busy. It looks like we've just missed some beaver action this morning. This is very fresh. If you look over here, you can see that it's been dragging wood down this trail here. And then down into the water. The rain showed no sign of stopping when we continued on to Kettle Lakes Provincial Park, so after lunch we continued on to the town of Cochrane. From here you can catch the Polar Bear Express to the northern community of Moosonee, located on the shores of the Hudson Bay and only reachable by train or plane. With storm clouds still lingering, we visited a couple of places in Cochrane, Commando Lake, and a memorial to the people of Cochrane who rebuilt their community following a devastating fire in 1916. Canada likes large, cheesy roadside monuments. On day 3, we stopped briefly in Moonbeam. With the bad weather behind us and the skies turning blue, we arrived at Nagagamesis Provincial Park. The time trail was one of my favourite hikes.
Well, if we get lost, they'll know we're here.
But will they care? Everything was a beautiful emerald green, like a fairy tale forest, with a diverse variety of mosses, lichens, and fungi. We discovered a large rock painted with a poem by Eric R. Moore.
The hard land heaving from each rebirth rewards my toil. I press my ear to the hot, yielding earth, hear the torrents of vital harmony, forging new life in turbulent spasms.
Canada angers for angry folk, melting their anger in its fertile soil, sweating for fruit and splendid things.